Hi everybody, this is Rob Chavez, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about wholesaling and what wholesaling is and what it's all about. Our first meeting of the year for our Casa Real Estate Investing meetup was a great success. We had about 62 investors sharing leads, ideas, strategies. There was a lot of energy in the room, and a lot of people got a lot of questions answered. And what I'm hoping to do is just expose you to some more information or some new information for those of you that are just starting out and want to learn a little bit more about wholesaling. So, what is wholesaling? Well, it's essentially when you put a property under contract and then you have the rights and ability to sell that contract to an end buyer, okay? And they're going to pay you a wholesale fee for doing it. Now, there's a couple things that brings up. The contract that you use has to be an assignable contract. You have to be able to have the ability to assign that contract to an end buyer. Also, typically your end buyer has to be a cash buyer. Okay, there are ways around that, but typically they have to be a cash buyer because banks do not want to see assignment of contracts. And so that begs the question, well, what kind of properties do you actually put under contract? Well, typically they're properties that require extensive renovation. Not always, but most of the time. They need, you know, the roof is leaking, or there's mold in the basement, or the property hasn't been touched in 40 plus years and it needs everything, a total gut job. And those are the properties that wholesalers are typically going after, right? Because they know that they can create a spread, they can create the arbitrage that they need to be able to assign that to a rehabber. So I'm going to go over the math in a little second and kind of walk through the numbers of how it works. But I want to talk a little bit about how wholesalers go about and find these properties, because that's typically the number one question I get. Well, how do you find these properties? And really what you're going to do is you're going to go after some target markets. You're going to go after probate properties, right? Properties that have been inherited, essentially. And those heirs of the estate have to sell the property. And maybe they live in Canada and the property is in DC and it requires a ton of renovation and they don't have the money, the inclination, the time to do that. There's a lot of equity in the property. They know that they just can't put it on the open market with a realtor because it's not a property that can be financed. And so an investor can come in and buy that property, make it very easy. They buy it in as-is condition, and they say they close cash. And so a wholesaler will do that. They'll put that property under contract. They'll then market that to their buyers list, right? Their rehabbers list, I should say. And then, if it's a good deal, it'll go in a matter of hours. And the end buyer is going to agree to buy it for a specific price, and you, the wholesaler, you make whatever the arbitrage is. So I'll go over the numbers real fast, and we'll keep it really simple because I'm a simple guy. So if the property is worth $100,000 fixed up, right, and there's $20,000 in renovation, well, the rehabber knows if it's worth $100,000 fixed up, I'm going to discount it by 30%, right? So that's kind of what their margin is going to be and their profit. I'm going to discount it by 30%. And then, I'm going to start at 70,000 now. And if it's 20,000 in renovations, I'm going to back out the 20,000 in renovations. So the most that rehabber, that end buyer, can buy it for is 50. So the wholesaler's job is to get it below that number. And whatever they get it for is what they get it for. It could be 20, it could be 30,000. Let's just say they get it for 40,000. They put that property under contract for 40,000. They sell that contract and its rights to the end buyer, right? And they agree on, a price of 50,000. So that wholesaler's now made a $10,000 wholesale fee, which will go on the HUD as a wholesale fee paid to whatever LLC you've designated, it to go to, or to your name directly, whatever you want, however you decide to do that. So that's the basic math. Not that we have a lot of $100,000 properties here in this area. I mean, our average price point is going to be like $350 to $400 for properties like this. But I want to make the math simple for people out there so that they kind of understand. So the wholesaler's job is to get that property at a number below what the rehabber is willing to buy it for, and that's going to be their wholesale fee. And that's negotiable. All that's negotiable. Now, that brings up a couple of important points. The wholesaler really needs to know their numbers. They need to know what it's worth fixed up. So they need to know what the after repair value of that property is going to be, because that's what the rehabber is going to be focusing on. So they need to know what their end buyer, that rehabber, is going to base their numbers off of, which means that you really need to have access to the MLS, which is the multiple listing service. If you get that number wrong, it's gonna blow everything else, right? So you really need to understand what it's worth fixed up, and then you really need to understand how much it's going to cost to renovate. Because if you get that number wrong, again, all the numbers are thrown off. If you think it's going to be $20,000 and the rehabber walks into that property and it's really $30,000 in renovation, well, there goes your margin. There goes any kind of profit for you. So, two key numbers you need to know when you're rehabbing: what's it worth fixed up? I should say wholesaling and rehabbing, but especially wholesaling. What's it worth fixed up? And what are the costs of renovations? Because you're going to package that together, and you're going to present that to your end buyers, right? And that's how you're going to market the property. Okay. So that's kind of the basics of wholesaling. Now, I get a lot of specific questions. What happens if it's a really big number, like $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 wholesale fee, which happens often in this market. And there's certain strategies that you can use, and you can call me and I'll give those to you, or you can email me at rob@robertchavez.com to be able to not make it so obvious to the sellers that you're making a huge wholesale fee on the back end. Okay, so we can talk a little bit about that. Feel free to email me and I'll give you some specifics. Or actually, better yet, come to our investor meetup group, and you get the mastermind with a lot of people that do this every single day. So I encourage you to come out. And you can find that, by the way. You Google Casa Meetup, and it'll take you to the link, and just become a member. It's free, and I encourage you to come out. We share a ton of information. It doesn't cost any money at all. There's no pitching. It's literally a content-rich environment for us to be able to do deals together. So enough of that. So how do wholesalers find these deals? I think I jumped off a topic a little bit. They market. I mean, this is a marketing business, which means that they send letters out. They use Google AdWords. They reach out to their network. They typically are marketing to absentee landlords, estate sales, maybe people that are going into foreclosure and they know that there might be equity in that property. When you market to that group right now, there's a lot of short sales in there, and that's fine. You can set up some different strategies to be able to create arbitrage with short sales as well, but it becomes a little bit more complicated because the banks don't want to see that property being sold or assigned to somebody else. But like I said, you can do it. You just got to email me and we'll talk about that. It's a little bit more sophisticated on the process. So wholesaling, again, is going to be a marketing business. You have to have a message, right? And you have to really show the sellers that are out there that you have the ability to close on that property. Now, again, you're not going to be the one actually closing on that property. You're going to be finding an end buyer. Now, if you don't find an end buyer, you'll have some clauses that give you the ability to potentially extend the time to find the end buyer, or to release that contract because you weren't able to find the end buyer. I myself, once I put a property under contract, I know I'm going to settle on it because it's such a good deal. There's no way I'm not going to settle on that property, and I don't want to put the sellers in jeopardy. I know some wholesalers that will just kind of put a property under contract, try to assign it, and they're okay releasing that contract if they don't find the end buyer. And honestly, if you can't find an end buyer, it's because you got a bad deal, right? And so I don't do that to the sellers. They're making plans to move. You've told them that you're going to settle on that property, and you should settle on that property, or somebody's going to settle on that property, right? So what that also means is that you really need to know, you really have to have a buyer's list when you're a wholesaler. And you get that through networking. Nowadays, creating groups on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, great ways to be able to really build communities to be able to market your properties to. So those are some specific strategies to be able to do that with. Anyhow, if you have any more questions, feel free to call me. I'd love to answer any questions that you have regarding wholesaling. There's a lot to it, but it's not complicated. There's just some specific contracts that you're going to need. You're going to need an assignment contract, and it's a one-page document. It's pretty simple. And you're going to need a contract itself that could be assignable. So anyhow, I'm Rob Chavez. Feel free to email me or call me, 703-587-0995 if you have any questions, or email is rob@robertchavez.com. Look forward to helping you with your real estate investing. Take care. Talk to you soon.